Good morning, Live Oak Church. I'm excited to share with you some devotions on the topic of joy. It's one of the things I've been thinking about a lot. I've been praying over and asking myself, am I a joyful person? And I'm going to ask you today, are you a joyful person? And I'm not just talking about joy as far as the world would define it with happiness. Happiness is an emotion that is fleeting. It can be situation based. When things are going our way, when life is good, we can be very happy. We can even be described as happy-go-lucky. But that's different than joy. Joy is always, and as Paul says in the letter to Galatians, one of the fruit of the Spirit is joy. So we should always have joy regardless of the situation that we're in. So when I think about joy regardless of the situation, one of the verses that comes to my mind, and probably comes to your mind as well, is in James chapter 1, verse 2, where James is writing to a group of believers who are being heavily persecuted. They've been dispersed. They've been moved from their houses and their homes. They don't have any hope. They've been stoned even. You think of the letter where Stephen is stoned. And so they don't have a lot of hope. And James writes to them and tells them, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For the testing of your faith produces steadfastness," or patience. And so James writing this letter to these that have no hope, he's telling them to count it all joy. So how can he do that? Well, the first thing he says is to count it. And so when you're counting something, that's an active participation with the Spirit. We have to actively pursue joy. And know that regardless of the situation, we can pursue joy because we know Jesus and we have faith in Him. So we can actively pursue joy. Now, he also says to count it all joy. So regardless of the situation, no matter what's going on, we can count it all joy. Whether it's good or bad, what the situation around us should not affect our heart, our emotions, and what's coming out of us should be joy. Even if it's not happiness, it should always be joy. So he goes on to say, when you meet trials. So not if, he doesn't say count it all joy if you meet various trials, because the reality is this life can be hard, and there's going to be times when we're going to have trials. It is a certainty that we're going to have trials, and it's in those times mostly that we have to lean on Christ. We have to lean on Christ when we meet trials, and it's going to be trials of various kinds. And we don't know what the trial is going to be. We can't predict our trial. We even have to have grace in trials for those around us, because one thing may be a trial to you, it's not a trial to me. So we should have grace in those trials. It's all various trials. It's not just what James was writing about here was in persecution. And hopefully in our lifetime, we'll never be persecuted like that. But it could happen. But there's also trials just in the daily humdrum of life. We face trials with our children. It could be trials with the loss of a job, a loss of a loved one. Maybe life is just hard for you right now, and that's a trial. But we need to count it all joy when we meet those trials. And how can we do that? Because we know that what's happening here, that when James says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. So God designs trials in order to draw us further and further closer to Him. Not further, but closer to Him. He designed these trials so that we depend on Him more. So the harder the trial, the more we have to lean on Jesus. And He's designed those so that He's molding us into His likeness. Isn't that cool? So to be able to be more like Jesus. So when these trials come, and they will come, and we're tested by the fire, we can know and have faith and confidence that Jesus is drawing us closer to Him, and we can lean on Him more. So I'm going to ask you, as you consider, are you a joyful person? Consider joining with me in actively pursuing joy in Christ in all things. I'll talk to you tomorrow.